Welcome to the Cryptosphere. This is Cryptogenic coming at you. It's Sunday evening, and I just got home from church a couple hours ago, took a nap on the couch. Thought I'd jump in here and do a video for you, just wearing my undershirt. Yesterday, I did a video about Bitcoin and its path to $90,000, but I suggested that we've got an incoming drop to about 24,000, maybe a breakout from there to about 32 before we get slammed with like $12,000 to $16,000 drop, and then the new bull run takes off. And so the question that I got that I want to respond to today is, if that's the case, what happens to the altcoin market in this whole progression? What do we have to look forward to as it concerns the altcoin market? So we're going to take a look at these charts, starting with the Bitcoin chart. First of all, let's update our analysis from yesterday. Looking at this daily chart. No, this is still a weekly chart. What am I doing? Daily chart over here. Looking at this daily chart. What it seems to me is that the price is going to want to come back and test this line before we can get a breakdown here. All right. If that's the case, the RSI is going to come up and test this level here before breaking down. So I think we're probably going to come up to around high 28,000s. Maybe it's going to try to test 29,000. Then I think we're going to get a drop down into this range, at least to retest this line here, high 24,000s. At which point, I think we're going to get a bounce and one more swipe. This is a diminished return because we're not going to make it back to the top of this line. We're going to hit this area here in the 31 to 33,000, and we're going to get rejected there. And the market's just going to tank. Why? Because when we get into this area here, there's going to be all kinds of hype, and everybody's going to be saying, this is it. Retail investors are going to dump their money in, and the whales are going to say, thank you so much, and they're going to exchange their Bitcoin for the money of the retail investors, and that will tank the market and bring us back down to the bottom, and that's where the new bull run will begin, because the whales will buy it up. Now, looking at this on the weekly chart, that simply looks like a retest of this line here and then a breakout. How far down on this line will go, I don't know. I can't promise that we're going to touch it again, but it seems pretty likely to me that we're going to revisit this area over here. And if we do, I see that as a screaming buy, my friends, and a long-term buy, because that will begin the new bull run in earnest. And I know a lot of us don't like talk about, a big drop like this. What is this? 56%, right? You don't want to talk about a 56% drop. We've had enough of those, right? We're ready to move on. But when you think about it, what would it take for us to get down sub 80% from the top? Remember, in each of the previous cycles, the drops from the top have been more than 80%. I don't know why this chart's not giving me all the information right now, but so far, we've only seen a 77% drop. This would get us all the way down into the 80 percentile, and the market confidence will be there for the next move. I do think what will happen is in the RSI, is we will get bullish divergence here. That is, the RSI will make a higher low, and then it'll take off. And if you notice what happens in the RSI always pumps from the middle. I mean, if you look at this run that happened here, the RSI was in the middle when it took off and we had the major move up. So this move here, 568%, 621%, happened from the middle of the RSI. And then we got bearish divergence that kind of telegraphed that the top was in. We'll be looking for that in the next move. So this is what I'm expecting to see. Now, with that in mind, what's going to happen to the altcoin market? Well, let's take a look at this altcoin market cap chart. This is the weekly chart. And what we can see is we're just in this range here. We're range bound here. And the bottom of the range is about 434 billion. The top of the range is about 700 billion. So we just keep bouncing within this range. And the question is, are we going to come back and revisit the bottom of this range? Now, if we revisit the bottom of the range, we're looking at about a 23% drop for the altcoin market. So if we drill down into this a little bit, what would that look like? Let's take a look at the daily chart here for the altcoin market. And we see a couple of things. One, we're making lower highs in the RSI, but higher highs in the price, which is classic bearish divergence. However, no, that's just bearish divergence because we're making higher lows and we're making higher lows. So this classic bearish divergence, now we did bounce here. So this indicates to me that we could come up and test the top of this line one more time before we break down, which means that we may want to come up here, but I think we'll probably get a diminished return and then a breakdown. And what would that breakdown look like? Somewhere around a 22% breakdown. And if I sync this in the layout, what would that look like? Basically, if we go back to the weekly chart, it's just above the bottom of this range here. So basically the odds are the RSI is the altcoin market is coming back down to test the bottom of the range. However, on the so basically this little breakout here is we see the testimony of it here on the 4-hour chart, where we're wanting to come and test the top of this. It's somewhere around 3.5% from where we are. And that's about as far as we can get before the RSI tops out and then breaks down. So for all intents and purposes, I'm expecting about a 23% drop in the altcoin market. We may get one little pump here that may get everybody excited, but I don't expect, it's not a bad pump. That's about a 16% pump, 17% pump that's possible here. But on the 4-hour chart, that's only a 3% pump. So that would mean if we're going to get a 16% pump, we'd have to break bullish. And so if we break bullish here, the total would be basically 16%. So if we're going to get a bullish break here, we could actually see a little rally in the altcoin market. 16% rally before we ultimately drop. And then basically, we've just got to watch for the break of this range, because if we break bearish out of this range, this drop could be substantial. I mean, a bearish break from this range could take us down another 38%. But a break above the range could take us up about 53%. Now, I do not expect a bearish break from this range, and I'll tell you why. In order to answer that question, we've got to come over here to the Bitcoin dominance chart. Now, Bitcoin dominance has also been range-bound here. Basically, between 40 and 50%. It just keeps bouncing within that range. But a couple of things are happening on the weekly chart. While the highs and lows are flat, the RSI is basically building momentum, making higher lows and higher highs. So the question is, when you have basically bullish divergence and bearish and hidden bearish divergence on the same chart, so the RSI is making higher highs, that's hidden bearish divergence. But the RSI is also making higher lows, which is classic bullish divergence. So what does this mean? Well, what it does is those two divergences cancel each other out. What this simply looks like to me is the RSI is making its way to the top, basically winding up, building momentum for a drop. Now, I think we're going to get at least a 16% drop in Bitcoin dominance, at least. And if we break beneath this line, which I think is very possible, we'll get another 18% drop. And the floor of that could be all the way down at 32.5%. To further add to this, we've got the 3-day chart. And on the 3-day chart, Bitcoin dominance is in a bearish reversal pattern here. This is an ascending, broadening wedge. And you see how the RSI is topped out, but we're still making higher highs. So the top of the RSI is in on the 3-day. And then we're making these higher lows. But all this is doing basically is preparing us for the drop. So, you know, we could get one more breakout here and then a drop is what I would imagine, what I expect to happen. And the daily chart kind of gives us a picture of this. So here, this looks like a bullflower, bull pennant. But then we've got this falling channel or falling wedge, depending on how you draw it. Could be a falling wedge in the RSI. And once again, this could be bearish divergence, but I don't see this as bearish divergence because it's slightly lower highs as well, and you got lower highs. I mean, here you had bearish divergence but basically what happens is see, these divergences can invalidate themselves as the RSI comes to the oversold position. It's simply winding up to break out. And as it makes its way to the overbought position, it's winding up to break down. So what I see here happening is the RSI is winding up for a short-term breakout, just as Bitcoin dominance is winding up for a short-term breakout. And that short-term breakout could take us up 4%, 4.5% in the short term. And that will just pierce the 50% mark. But that is best case scenario for Bitcoin dominance, because when you look at the 3-day chart and then you look at the weekly chart, in both macro scenarios, this little pump here is not going to change the macro outlook. And I just synced this target here with these two charts. Best case scenario is basically we follow my arrow. We get one little pump and just penetrate the 50% mark, just penetrate this line, and then we got to break down again. So my projection is Bitcoin dominance will top out and then drop about 20%. So if Bitcoin dominance drops 20%, what we're looking at is something like this in the altcoin market. So notice Bitcoin dominance breaks out and then breaks down, which means that the altcoin market breaks down and then breaks out. Okay? Now, so that is my expectation in the coming days, that we're going to see Bitcoin dominance have a little breakout, which means that this move up here towards 32, 33%, Bitcoin is going to move faster than the altcoin market. But then this breakdown that I expect to happen here from this realm, Bitcoin is also going to break down faster than the altcoin market, which means ultimately I think the alts are going to break down with Bitcoin initially, but then the alts will turn around at some point before Bitcoin turns around and start making their way up. And I will keep you abreast of this whole situation, this whole happening as we go. I got more to say about it, but I'm going to stop for now. I plan on making another video about this tomorrow to take this to another level. But until then, remember, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Also, remember, as I announced yesterday in my video, that between now and August, I'm giving all of my Patreon income to our project in the Philippines, where we're building a $50,000 dormitory unit for our orphanage there in the Philippines. A couple of people have asked if there's a way to donate directly to this. You can. Yes, I'll put a link in the description and instructions on how to do it. Or just join my Patreon, and the money that you put into my Patreon, number one, it will benefit you financially. But then number two, I'm going to give that money between now and August to benefit our children there in Indonesia. But remember to sleep in peace, wake in joy, and walk in love. That's all I got for you tonight. This is Cryptogenic, signing out.